I'm Josh.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nemo.
And we just nerd here.
Tonight we have for you 3 eerie tales. 1 true, 1 entirely true, and the other the most honest story that you've ever heard. Our first story is one that comes from my own family. I, Mr. Raleigh, have been heard this tale, and I have been heard that it has been heard by many of my family as well. Now, to begin the story, a little bit of context. My great-grandfather was a lumberjack. They called him Lumberjack Joe. Lumberjack Joe was no penance to anything of the supernatural. He gave no heedance to it, and he didn't care. He was a lumberjack for many years, wearing his iconic studded boots that had spikes on the heel and on the forefoot of them to help climb trees. He also had his rope harness that he would use with his partner, and in conjunction, they would go from the top down of the tree to cut it down. Therefore was the lumberjack back in the day. Now, Lumberjack Joe died a lumberjack. Some say he was even born a lumberjack, being that there was one thing he loved in this world besides his wife and family, and that was cutting down trees. Now, Lumberjack Joe died cutting down a tree. He actually fell from one. It was the first and only fall he ever took as a lumberjack. It was from a 50-foot-high pine, and when he fell, he didn't scream, he didn't make a noise, he didn't flail around. He just fell, almost accepting his death. Now, Lumberjack Joe widowed a wonderful woman and her 4 or 5 kids. Can't remember. Now, one of those 4 or 5 kids was my grandfather. And they owned a logging cabin, being that Joe was a logger, and after he passed away, they stopped going to it. They stopped visiting it almost entirely, except for on the rare occasion. My grandpa got an old enough age. It was about my age, actually, 20 to 21, and decided he was going to take him and a cousin and his sister to the cabin. They were going to go just have a good weekend, drink a little, and, do what things you do at a cabin. Just be young and dick around. Now, they headed up to the cabin, and the cabin had, not to say modern at the time, not even modern when it was built, kind of architecture as well as structure and building within it, plus everything from the wood of the floorboards to the sink creaked and moaned and crackled. So it was a very noisy house, very loud house. They had a few pieces of furniture, still very antiquated. A rocking chair, a old wooden table, and old wooden other furniture, just little stools here and there, and a great big fireplace. There was a second story with only 1 room. There was a fireplace for both the bottom and the second story, however, and there was a rocking chair on the top floor as well, with, granted, very creaky, very noisy stairs going from the bottom to the top floor. Now, Uncle Joe, when he got up in the morning, living on the top floor, he would also have his boots on the top floor, his logging boots. Everybody knew this. Everybody knew that when he put on his boots to when he took them off, he was working, and that was his mindset. He ate breakfast, he was working. He was getting dressed, as long as he had his boots on, he was working. The man was very single-minded in that way. Now, back to my grandpa and his cousin and his sister. They were staying in this cabin, he sitting by the fireplace in the rocking chair on the first floor, creaking back and forth, rocking and swaying and enjoying just the life. It was evening time, and cousin sitting at the table doing the puzzle with sister, when he hears a very distinct noise, a creaking and a crackling of the logging boots being stepped into on the top floor. Now, my grandpa didn't think anything of this. He didn't really mind. He just thought it was a noisy house. Nothing to be worried about. But he heard it again. Not the shoes getting into this time, but the shoes moving. These big, spiked logging boots, making a very distinct step into and step out of the wood. Now, my uncle began to be concerned, given that he was staying in the top room on this particular vacation or trip. My uncle thought to himself, maybe I should investigate. No, that's silly. It's just an old house. Just creaky boards. Nothing to really worry about. Then my great aunt heard it, too. The creaking. The crick, crick, crick of the shoes moving from one side of the upstairs to the next. My uncle stopped swaying in his rocking chair. Everything stopped. It was quiet. No more sounds, no more anything. He looked at his sister, and then he looked at his cousin, and he decided he was going to go investigate. He goes upstairs. He doesn't see anything. He has his things that he's laid out. The old bedpost, not really much worth more than a cot. And his sleeping bag and apparel. Nothing to be concerned about. He was stepping on the floorboards himself and realized it's just our creaky house. Old nails, lots of old things, nothing to be worried about in any case. And then the rocking chair on the second floor just moved a little bit, just enough that it caught his eye, and as soon as he turned and gave it full attention, it stopped. Just a trick of the eye. Nothing to worry about. Just a creaky house. You're spooking yourself. You don't need to worry. He grabs his coat from upstairs, and he goes downstairs, kind of noticing that it's a little chilly. Goes downstairs next to the fireplace, warms up, puts on his coat, just enjoying it, talking to his sister, telling her it was nothing, not to worry. They go back to their puzzle, and he goes back to just almost taking a nap, kind of drowsing off. He wakes up the next day in that chair. His sister and his cousin in the main part of the room, asleep in their makeshift beds that they've made. And he hears something upstairs. Not the boots this time, but a rocking back and forth on wood. Very similar to the rocking chair that he himself found himself awake in early in the morning. It was really cold. The fire had died and just nothing but embers, so he was going to start it again. When he heard feet get out of the rocking chair and step onto the floor, the rocking chair's distinct back and forth stopping upstairs, his heart froze. He thought for a moment that maybe someone broke in and didn't mind that there were people already downstairs. They were going to go upstairs and have themselves a nap, or a shelter at least. He grabbed his gun without hesitation. An old 30-aught H&H. He loaded it, made sure it was well primed and clear, and waited patiently. The room got really cold, though. Really cold. started putting firewood in the fireplace, grabbed the tinderbox, and lit it. Letting that build, he waited patiently. Then he heard whoever it was upstairs put on logging boots. Not even modern logging boots, or what modern logging is. The old logging boots that my great-grandpa wore. Put them on, and he stepped in that same spot that it was coming from the day before, walking ever so close to the stairs leading downstairs. He heard the crick, or crick, or crick, or crick of it slowly but certainly coming toward the stairs. It must have been a joke. One of the two must have been awake, making the noises. Though sister was up now, very, very scared, and waking up cousin. Now, Grandpa put up his gun, and he was waiting for whoever this was, whoever decided that they needed to break into the house, while they were staying there, clearly occupied. Not anybody, no clear sign of squatting. He waited, and then he heard the first footstep down the stairs that wrapped around. He heard it. Very distinct kirk, kirk, as the feet steadily grew in speed down the stairs. Kirk, 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 until he saw his dad. A blue visage of what he once was, floating there, with his old logging boots on. He could see the nails of where the logging boot spikes were going into the wood, moving the grain upon further inspection, physically affecting the stairs. Grandpa froze. He dropped his gun. And he stared. Sister stared. Cousin stared. And they were scared. Grandpa came down. Kirk, 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 kirk. The last two steps. Kirk. Onto the hard ground log that laid the base of the cabin. Walked over to the fireplace. Put his hands by the fire, and sat in his old rocking chair. The back and forth of the rocking chair continued for just a moment. Grandpa was gone. Great-grandpa was gone. And Grandpa, he got out of there. So did great-aunt and cousin. They got out of there, and they did not look back. That old cabin, never gone to again. From that day forward, that story's been told. My dad told it to me. I'm certainly going to tell it to my kids. And the moral of the story is, if you find yourself in a place where you're hearing strange noises, don't just take it lightheartedly. There could be an old logger waiting to rock in his chair. Okay. Now, that's the end of our first story. If you do have any questions, you're welcome to leave them down in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and let us know what you think. Now, our second story, titled The Wicker Man, is a tale that I myself am just a little afraid of. And I tell it with a very heavy heart, being that I don't ever want to see this in real life, and I hope it never happens. We see ourselves in a rural town, pretty well populated, modernized. It is 2018 after all. The town has cell reception and power, running water, everything essential for a modern living society. Though they do something kind of odd, something that they've had for hundreds of years in this little rural town. And there's farms all around that participate too and make sure that everyone's involved, is the celebration of the Wicker Man. More the visage of the Wicker Man than a celebration. But they call it a celebration all the same. You know, these kinds of things get mucked up in history and people decide what they want to call it and how they want to call it. This one, it's the celebration of the Wicker Man. Now, every year in this town, everybody and their kids get so excited for Halloween. And they kick it off with a visage burning. They construct this giant straw and twig and branch individual that they call the Wicker Man. It's just a name that somebody came up with however many years ago. No big story there. Kids sometimes make up things like hundreds of years ago they burned the Wicker Man every year and it gave them great crops and everything, but every 100 years the Wicker Man would want to sacrifice and demanded it, in fact. But that's just children's tales. No big deal, no real worry there. Nobody ever thought of it as something serious. There were some older people in the crowd and some older people in the town that just didn't agree with it, saying it brought bad something of some kind, and nobody really cared. But it was always a celebration. So they've been doing this for hundreds of years, right? Nothing ever came bad out of it. This time, we find ourselves in the center of this rural town. They have the big construction going. They're almost done with the Wicker Man. Tonight is the party. Tonight is everything and anything everybody ever wanted with Halloween. Everybody's so excited. Candy for all the kids. Everybody's in their best costume that they can either make themselves or shop online and find one. Everybody's so excited. Everybody's finding themselves part of the town, part of the buzz. Everybody has a role, and nobody's left out. It's a great time. Even the homeless or the down on luck get taken care of at this time. Everybody makes sure that everybody has a good experience with the Wicker Man every year. It's what Christmas is for most people. It's what the holiday season is, right, for this little town. Now, we find ourselves with a family, a mom and a dad, and little Ellie, a girl who wanted a simple costume this year. She just wanted to be a skeleton. Just a simple black and white costume, little decals here and there. A nice one. It glue in the dark too, so during the night she would have something to show the other kids and be proud of. Now, this little family were walking to the square. Everybody's in prep time. Jack-o'-lanterns everywhere. You have everything from the movie theater playing Nightmare Before Christmas and any other Halloween movie you can think of that was appropriate for all ages. Of course, this is a celebration. The stores are a boom. Everybody's so excited for Halloween, for the Wicker Man, for everything that happens every year that makes people want to live in this town. This year was a little different, though. Things were kind of off. Little things here and there. People putting things in trees fell. Everything from sweeping up hay to picking up tinder for a fire. Just little things here and there just didn't go very well. So people were a little on edge for some part. No one seriously hurt, but this town usually had a ton of good luck, and this season was no exception. There was a ton of crop, and everybody had enough hay for their farm animals, and everyone was doing really well. Nothing out of the ordinary, really out of the ordinary. Your autumn leaves blowing on the ground, on the nice hard pavement. You have trucks going here and there. People just enjoying life, being human. Now it's time. Everything's prepared. Everyone's ready. Everyone's excited to burn the Wicker Man. They have this 25 feet tall monstrosity of wood and hay and twigs and leaves and all sorts of things. that they're gonna burn. They made a face out of it and everything. It's a big deal. They had a professional chainsaw carver come in and make sure that the detail on the face looked nice, and that the fire would billow properly throughout the entire body before collapsing into a heap of wood and structure, and you get the gist. Everyone circles around it. They hold hands. It's tradition, right? They chant, "Die, Wicker Man, die." A little grim, but it's tradition. You have to follow tradition. They chant and they chant and they swivel back and forth, holding hands. "Die, Wicker Man, die. Die, Wicker Man, die. Burn, Wicker Man, burn. Burn, Wicker Man, burn. Die, burn, die, burn, die." They light the fire. The Wicker Man, with his hollow edge full of hay, full of dry leaves, goes up in an instant. The inside does. His eyes and mouth come aflame, being open similar to a jack-o'-lantern, to show that he's hollow on the inside. While they're chanting and cheering and they've completed their ritual, now they can have Halloween, you hear an odd crash, almost. And then a crunch. A loud as his feet raise and slam down on some random people. Everyone turns a shock. The Wicker Man has come to life. A blaze, fire burning and bellowing, he lets out a loud
"You know not what you've done. It's time to die."
And the Wicker Man collapses in a billow of flame. The town affright. 2 of their citizens just got crushed. And what was that? The Wicker Man. And then they hear something in the air. A rustle of leaves and twigs. And then they hear,
"It's time for my harvest this year."
Something weird happened. A child. Just leaves started going into its mouth. The little boy sitting there in a costume of Lightning McQueen, just smothered by leaves and twigs and hay. And it's going inside of him. It's filling him up. It's grotesque. His jaw, it's unnatural. It's unnerving. He's just consuming so much. And then another, a little girl this time. So much leaves and twigs and a branch just went inside of her. And she can't, her body, what is her arm doing? Why? And then little Ellie, looking around, seeing her friends, seeing her classmates, her mom and dad losing it. Don't know what to do. They grab her, they pick her up, they're running as they see kids all throughout the town, any age, anyone that's not an adult, being covered, surrounded, attacked by leaves and twigs, filling them up, going into their mouth. People covering their mouth, going into their nose, coming out of their body after entering. A gruesome scene. People being separated in 2. Ellie's doesn't know what to do. She's holding her breath, just holding her mom, her dad running with them. A pumpkin they run into. Her dad trips on. The pumpkin jumps up. Ellie, for some reason, opens her mouth wide enough for the pumpkin, swallowing it whole. Consumed a pumpkin. Ellie doesn't know what's going on. She hurts on the inside. She doesn't know what's happening. And then suddenly leaves. She's eating leaves. Why is she eating leaves? She hasn't eaten leaves. Twigs. She doesn't know what's going on, and then nothing. Chaos ensues. Everybody in the town doesn't know what's going on. It's Halloween. This trick-or-treating, you got left with a trick and with the wrong kind of treat. The day after Halloween, they had to call in the FBI and the National Guard. There were so many bodies of children, twigs erupting from them, most of them unidentifiable, except for parents saying, "That was my kid. I watched this happen." An explosion of plants, festive items, and more than anything, hay, twigs, and leaves being consumed by children in ungodly amounts till they exploded, until they started seeing twigs erupting from their fingernails and shooting from their arms and legs and their entire torso exploding. They never figured out why that happened, though. Why the children died, or what was going on that it had to happen. They never really pieced things together. It's been a few years. There's some new kids, and they've been doing the Wicker Man thing again for a while. No one really got it. The harvests have never been better, though. Honestly, the town's doing so well now that they're going to have more people move there. The little farms outside are booming. Nothing has been better. The corn, the hay, everything. It is renowned now. The world's #1 farming town, in fact. The best community that anyone's ever seen. With a distinct lack of anyone between the ages of 4 and 17. But hey, at least they have a good harvest. Now this next tale, the one I want to end on, I find is a snapshot of a good horror story. Really just a 1,000 words to describe a photograph of what it can be and what it should. But this next story, I want to tell with another word of caution. Things around you aren't always what they seem. And if you decide to disturb the illusion enough that you see them and want to do something about them, be careful what sees you back. Now, it's Thanksgiving. Everyone's having a good time. We see ourselves in a little home with a significantly large family. We have some extended family here for the holidays. Grandma lives with our protagonist and his family, though. Billy John is his name. Billy John, and he has his wife Loretta, and each of his kids. He loves them all. Definitely has a favorite kid, though, and his name is Billy too. He named him after himself, Billy Jr. more than anything, but William is what they called him. They called him Little Willie, and he loved his family. He was a photographer by trade, and made most of his money actually editing in Photoshop. Did more editing for people online nowadays than anyone else. Everyone needs a good editor, and everyone needs somebody who can make them look better than they are. Now, Billy John really, he really loved photos, and he took photos of everything. Everything from when his kids were born to when he even took pictures of his own wedding. But he loved taking one kind of photo more than anything. He loved taking photos of old people for some reason. He just saw a glow in them, just an aura of healthy light. And his grandma, who stayed with him, was no exception. She was there. She'd take care of the kids. He loved his grandma. His grandma outlived his mom, unfortunately, but she was always healthy and kind, and she was really sweet, so she lived with him. Now, Billy John was taking photos of his family at this Thanksgiving party. Everyone's eating, and it's been a good time. When he takes a picture of his grandma, who was just looking somewhere. And he didn't get it. He was looking at her, told her to look up. She didn't, but he took the picture anyways. She looked happy. Later that day, he was looking through his photos, going through what was best with his wife. They were laying in bed, just talking, shooting the shit, just enjoying life. A lot of the extended family were staying in the house too, but they were going home tomorrow, so nothing big on his plate. There's his vacation days and his photography, and he was just excited. He was going through his DSLR and he found an odd photo. That photo he took of his grandma when she wouldn't look at him, he saw something in it. He saw an older lady. Weird, though. It didn't look anything like anybody he'd ever seen before. And he was just weirded out. Maybe it was just an overexposure. Maybe he's just seeing something that isn't really there. But maybe that is somebody. Maybe grandma has some psychic power. She can see beyond the grave. Weird. He went to bed, needless to say. Kind of forgot about it. He was going to expose the photos himself, being that he is a photographer. Kind of enjoyed doing that. He had his DSLR. It also had film integrated, though. So he liked taking the process in his red room of making them himself. And he enjoyed that a lot. It had been a couple weeks at this time. He was exposing his photos. He remembered that one that he thought was really weird and kind of stuck with him. Since then, he took lots of pictures of his grandma. Nothing out of the usual, just like he usually did. But it got more and more weird. Her health started to deteriorate rapidly. She stopped talking altogether, and she would never watch the kids. She didn't care. She seemed to not care about anything. She didn't really eat either, not that he saw, but he was sure that she'd be okay. Now, he was exposing in the red room when he started seeing these large scribbles. And by scribbles, they looked like big black scratches everywhere. Kind of cartoony almost, kind of wildly unrealistic. And he saw them starting in the photo from Thanksgiving. And they were in every single one of the photos that he took of his grandma after that. Odd. They kind of look like they're intersecting from the photos themselves, but they're in real life. He started putting things together and looking at what the lines made themselves. And he took the time in his red room through the exposure to hang them up in an order. They made a face. A really weird, scratchy face. It was female and had distinct wrinkles, but no eyes. And a wicked smile with fangs. Large, ungodly teeth. He was really weirded out at this point, and he kind of wanted to check on his grandma. He left his red room. His wife wasn't home, and he was worried if she did come home, she'd think he's crazy. So he didn't say anything. He left his red room, shut out the light, walked away, and he fed his DSLR. Weird, he had it in his red room, but it's outside. There's film in it, but no SD card. Odd. He picked it up. The flash was ready. Interesting. He didn't think much of it. He put it around his neck and he was going to go talk to his grandma. Just see if she was okay. Came to his grandma's room. She wasn't answering. which at this point is still weird to him, but she hadn't been answering any time before. He walked in and saw her sitting in her chair in front of her TV, and he didn't think much of it. Though he looked at the TV and it was just white noise. Weird. He went to his grandma, and she wasn't responding. She smelled pretty bad too. He wondered if she'd been showering, but it didn't matter. He touched her, and she didn't do anything. He'd been going to hold her hand every time after the last 2 weeks, just because that's the only way she would respond. She'd put her hand on his after holding it, and he goes to grab her hand with both hands, holding it tight, saying, "Grandma, are you okay? What's going on? Do we need to take it back? What's going on?" Her other hand kind of lifted almost and dropped on top of his, holding hers, and her head kind of creaked and looked up at him. He let go. He backed away, her body just going completely limp at this point, sitting in her chair, eyes wide open. He lifted up his camera out of almost instinct, and a flash. The flash covered the room, filling it with instant white light. Scratches, just like the ones he saw in the photos. Below him, leading to the door, like a path. His grandma stopped moving. Entirely. He was sure she was dead, but he needed to figure out what was going on. Another flash. He turned and he looked in as the path continued out the door. He could only see it in that brief moment, that brief flash, a very distinct black scratch. He made the door as wide as he could, backing away, trying to get away from his grandma, but staying in the room, frightened to leave. Another flash, revealing the path out. He was scared. He was really scared. He grabbed his phone and he was going to call his wife. No service. In fact, the phone was just white noise. He dropped it, frightened out of his living gourd. The flash went off again. There was a face on the phone. A woman's face. He looked at the TV with the white noise. Again, the face, pointing this time in the direction that the path is leading. He held his breath, and he ran for the door. He dropped the camera. He went for the door, trying the knob as best as he could. The door wouldn't budge. He pulled and he pulled, and he could not open it. He went for the back door, slamming into the glass. Nothing. He couldn't even see out of it. Like there's nothing there. Just black. Thoroughly freaked out. He didn't know what to do. The lights in the house started flickering on and off. Flickering so fast that he could see the path on the ground until the lights themselves exploded. All of them in the house. He heard an eruption of light fixtures, of light bulbs, of fans falling off of the ceiling. He went for his camera. Found it there. His grandma's body this time, laying on the ground, pointing, almost touching the camera, with her gnarled finger pointing in a direction. He took a picture again, seeing the path and where it was leading. The basement? The garage? Where? Where was this? Again, moving down where the path was leading. It started to curve up the hallway and back down again. just showing that whatever this was unnatural and unholy. He went for his cross. He didn't find it. In fact, he didn't find anything relating to anything besides the camera and the DSLR. For some reason, his bed was gone. The countertop, the kitchen, it was all gone. Just the path and the door to the basement out of the corner of his room. He held his breath and he was scared. He didn't know what to do. He was going crazy. This must be it. He was going crazy. There's no way that he wasn't just absolutely bonkers at this point. He tried to figure everything out in his mind and he just couldn't. Another photo. The path leading to the basement door. He opened it hesitantly. Pitch black. Scratches all the way down the basement, covering ceiling to wall to ground. The stairs looking like they were gnarled by something with claws entirely menacing and unwelcoming. He was scared and he didn't know what was happening. He's walking down the stairs again, trying to ready the flash as quick as it can. Seeing more of the scratches, making shapes this time, still leading a distinct path. There was 100 rooms in his basement. The landing led to doors and doors and doors. Everything was black and white, and then dark. Path. One path, leading to one door out of the hundreds. He saw monsters now. Thousands of them. Unholy beasts, tentacles, claws, teeth, fire. They're getting closer. He ran as fast as he could. He couldn't even keep up with his own thoughts. Running and running and running and running and running. The flash seeming to be the only thing that would keep these monsters away. He didn't even know what was happening at this point. He got to the door, a black door with a black handle. He tried and he tried, the door seemingly unlocking itself. He flung it open and he shut it as quick as he could, standing in darkness, hearing the things behind the other side of the door. And then nothing. The flash didn't work. Everything was black scratches. Everything was black. There was no light. And there was no flash. The woman from before. What is she doing here? Closer this time. Closer. He heard a voice. A soft voice. Billy John, I'm your grandma. Sitting there. Her hand so close to his face this last flash. He could feel the warmth off of her hand. No, that wasn't warmth. That was a cold chill that was burning him somehow. He felt it against his skin now, going down his cheek. Gnarled teeth opening. Goo falling from her mouth. Her eyes widening. Black, just black scratches. Not even a void, just scratches. Her teeth now, her smile in a rictus. So wide. He didn't even know how it was possible. Her other hand grabbing him now, tightly on the shoulder. The hand sliding down his arm holding the camera. He couldn't move. Her hand on the camera. The camera shattering. One last flash. showing a tongue that was wrapping around him, teeth that were so wide it could swallow the whole house, and then nothing. Billy John woke up the next day to find that his grandma had been dead. She had been dead for some time. Seemingly the body animated, it was living through her regular routine, just not saying anything and playing along, being a part of the family. Now, Billy John's wife, Irene, she was a good woman. She did a lot. She participated in community service. She loved her kids. She loved her husband. They buried her, Billy John's grandma, though. For some reason, Billy John wasn't really talkative. It's understandable, though. Knowing that his grandma had died and stuff, and he's going through a lot, he wasn't really taking as many pictures. In fact, she didn't see his camera anywhere anymore. She wondered if it was just in his red room. She didn't really like the red room. Not really her thing. Billy John started to smell bad, though, and she was worried about his personal hygiene. She'd seen him take showers, and they even took showers together sometimes, but he felt kind of cold. Or unnaturally hot. One of the two. She's not really worried, though. Irene just loved her life. She missed Billy John's grandma, but that's just how it was, and life continued. That's the story of the photographer. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I know I have. If you like scary stories, let us know. Take the opportunity to let us know in a comment section. Leave a review. This has been We Just Ghoul Here. I've been Mr. Raleigh. I hope you've enjoyed. You're welcome to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, MySpace, everywhere where there's haunted accounts of any kind. And until next time, we just ghoul here. Now you do too.